So I just came back from a brief trip in Ethiopia, and I wanted to do some reflection about it, just kind of say my views about life there from what I've seen, and maybe comment on some of the good, bad, and perhaps ugly aspects of life. So I went for a wedding, and specifically to Addis Ababa. I've never been to East Africa, so this is a really unique first experience, and I think overall I'm leaving with a good, positive mark. You know, there were a number of cool people that I met and became close to, and I think that will be undoubtedly the primary thing that I took away.
Like my style? Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future
I think
videos.
people in the capital, at least, are definitely overworked and probably underpaid, as in a lot of the world. But it's severe. I mean, it really is striking when you first arrive. Just facing the, poverty, to put it bluntly, is pretty intense. You'll have a lot of homeless kids, mothers with their young ones, and a lot of people are asking for money. They're asking for whatever they can get, food, of course. And we have homelessness too in the US, and it's pretty bad. But the one thing is that you usually don't see babies and kids on the street, but there's no shortage of that there. So while this caricature of the capital as being this growing and booming place, this new hub of East Africa, so to speak, it has to be mentioned that the gap between, where they seem to be aiming, which is very kind of corporate style apartment living. It's very established. It seems to be, demonstrating how far the average person is from the direction that they're heading. I talked to people that I became quite close with who told me they were only making $1 a day. And it's hard to, hear that and accept that this is the best that the country can do. They have this extreme investment in architecture right now. It's insane. So much construction. It's everywhere. And you feel like you're in the mix of this place that's building from the ground up. Maybe 50% of the city is not even finished right now. So there's a lot of beautiful places, but you have to keep in mind that so much of it is still being constructed day by day, week by week, month by month. There's money everywhere, but the ironic thing is that somehow that money doesn't seem to be circulating in the hands of citizens and Ethiopian nationals. So that's a hard disparity for me to justify. You got this big, complex that apparently I've heard is $1 trillion complex for the prime minister or whoever the leader is, and however much money is going into it just seems like a completely absurd use of capital. I mean, I just can't even try to rationalize that. And that's something that you can see pretty much anywhere you're in the city. You see this like big, it almost looks like a resort, you know, but apparently it's this mega complex that's being built for one person and their family, from what I can understand. So yeah, that's kind of the, you know, main things that really scream at you when you first enter. And it's hard to, you know, form relations when that is so apparent, because sometimes you can't tell if somebody genuinely wants to connect with you or wants to acquire something from you. And that's not to say you can't trust anybody, because that's just how life is, you know. You always have to filter people's intentions and judge their character. But a lot of people probably admittedly resort to scamming and other tactics to gain more money, especially from foreigners. And you can't blame them entirely for it. You know, we've all probably in some ways cheated the system, or, you know, cut a little off the top in our own rights. But what I've seen from the blatant, you know, lying and manipulation to extort the tourists, that's pretty extreme, you know. Like these scams where they invite you to a restaurant and then, you know, make you pay for the person who invited you under the pretense that it's going to be shared, you know, or taxi scams, you know, among many others. You know, there's so many. And the word scam is kind of, you know, used a lot. I just throw it out there, but really it's just describing that nature of behavior that really is exploitative. And it almost feels like it's done kind of in not a completely malevolent way, but at least a kind of inconsiderate way, you know, where sometimes if maybe people would just try to form those genuine genuine connections with foreigners, they might receive the help that they're looking for without having to, you know, kind of exploit them and use them. I know I have a bit more of a surplus, you know, comparatively, maybe from a financial standpoint, and I did try to use that to support others, and, you know, even just some small favors here and there, I feel like gained respect. And, you know, where a lot of people may come to Ethiopia and think, oh, it's so cheap, I can save so much money, and everything is just, you know, I can just buy so much. I think looking at it in a different way might help to enrich the experience, because if you think, okay, I come from this country that, you know, money just pretty much grows on trees. Maybe what in our country doesn't seem like a lot of money to another place might seem like a fortune. So I think Ethiopians do value, you know, genuine support, so long as they, just like everybody, are able to see that it's coming from a good place. And a lot of times you have to get people to lower their guard first to do that. So yeah, I'm not trying to make too much of a characterization outside of saying that just in the capital, I think money is a big problem, and probably in the rest of the country too. But it just seems like they're not where they should be. all this development is going on to make it into this grandiose city, but a lot of people are just being kicked to the curb, and it feels like they're being treated like animals, and they're resorting to whatever means they can just to get by. So fortunately, I didn't experience too many of those types of situations, and I feel like I was able to navigate, through certain areas with some clarity and some calmness, which definitely helps. Of course, I blend in to a degree, so just based on my appearance, I'm able to feel a bit more at ease, which I appreciate, And I felt pretty comfortable with a lot of the cultural elements too. The food was really cool. I tried many types of food: injera, full, feta, ibs. You have to get the ibs. And yeah, so those foods are pretty traditional, they're pretty basic, but ibs is a beef dish, and pretty much just like pieces of beef with injera, which is like this kind of flat crepe like food that's used as a base for most dishes. And there's all sorts of different styles of injera. It's pretty good with more moist type food. I would say the drier the food is, the less use the injera has, because it kind of soaks up, the flavor and juice. So if you have more dry food, I'd probably eat just rice, to be honest. But yeah, I tried camel meats. I tried lamb, had some goats. So a lot of different types of meat I don't typically eat. And that was nice, just to have something different. I didn't try the raw meat though. That was one thing I stayed clear from, and I probably will in the future as well. It's weird, it's like being there now, it feels like a lot of people are seeing the potential. A lot of people I met were shooting content there. There was no shortage of people that were documenting their trips, and in most ways I feel like it was positive. But I don't think the culture of Ethiopia prefers cameras, and so that's why I really took a break from doing the filming and even just public shots, because I just didn't want to overstep my boundaries and just be so concerned about what I need to get that I'm pushing my desires onto other people. I think the truth is that some people just don't want to be exposed. They like the privacy and the anonymity that comes with their life in the place that they are, and they don't really want to be, overshared with the world, or be a part of someone else's video concept for views and clicks and likes. So yeah, I think I tried to balance that, and I wish I had more to share, but I just respected the feeling I had, which was just to be more present and less, on those devices. And I was able to spend some time learning Amharic, which is the language that they speak. And actually, I did learn a decent amount. even in that time, in just 2 weeks. So I think I'm gonna do another video on that. But yeah, I think it was a pretty successful trial. You know, just like numbers and how to introduce myself, how to, you know, say some basic stuff, and some foods, dates, you know. So overall, it gave me enough conversational skills to have some interactions with a few people I met, especially those that only spoke Amharic. So, you know, can ask questions like min yarik no or min yarik shno for female. Seme mano, semesh mano for female. Kene in diet no. How was your day? So stuff like that, you know, it helps. You're able to cross the language barrier and, you know, speak to people a bit more colloquially, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, that's something that I'll probably share in the next video, is how much did I learn in 2 weeks? Because I think it went really well. I was studying every day for about an hour and, you know, really put effort towards trying to understand how it sounds. Not so much the grammar, but just how does it sound, you know? Yeah. It's cool. I'ma say gnalo, holgizi, alifo. Yeah. Salam no. Denadek. Good morning. Denadesh. Denanesh. Denane. How are you? Yeah. I miss it. Yeah. Definitely miss it. But I don't miss the mosquitoes. So that's one thing that's really extreme. Gotta get used to that, is the mosquitoes are next level. Yeah. And that takes me to kind of my final experience. You know, most of the days were spent practicing Amharic, maybe visiting a new location, eating some new food, and growing closer to the people I met. But something happened the final day that really struck me. And I didn't even have time to process it immediately after because I had to fly. But it's the last interaction I had with a guy that I met through the rideshare app called Ride. And he picked me up. We had a conversation one day and he told me, you know, here's my personal number, just call me whenever you need a ride. And yeah, I just figured I would just, you know, just utilize this guy because he was reliable, he was communicative, and I just felt like he was a good person to be around. And I wanted my money to go towards him because he was really friendly. And then, you know, a couple rides later, he actually invited me to his home, and he said that, you know, he wanted me to meet his family, his sons, his wife. And I was over there, had dinner, and it was incredible. It felt really sweet, you know, just being able to connect with his family and almost be a part of them myself. And I even was able to go over there one more time for just a beer, and also enjoyed speaking with them then. But this culminated into the final interaction I had with this guy. Before then, I had never had a bad feeling. I never had any sort of, you know, itch about it. But the last day, I had asked him if he could give me a ride to the airport when I was leaving. And I made it clear on a number of occasions that it was a nighttime pickup. And he lived just down the road. This guy was only 100 meters away from the house, so it's really close, really convenient to get there. And he agreed. We confirmed the details probably 4 times, to be exact, that it was in the AM. And Ethiopia does have a different time than the US. Than the rest of the world in terms of the, morning, afternoon, etc. They're 6 hours different than the traditional time that is, present in Ethiopia. This is called Ethiopian time. So, that's one thing I was being wary of. That's why I continued to try to confirm the details with him, make sure that he was on the same page, that I was on the same page. And I had it in text message form. I had it over a call. I talked to him in person about it. All this just to say that when he arrived at 1:30 a.m., I called him 10 minutes before just to make sure he was coming. When he arrived, it was like I had met a completely different person. And the image is still so significant because my perception of him up until that point was just this really kind and generous individual who, wanted to welcome me into the Ethiopian, culture and really embrace his family as my own to an extent, just temporarily while I was there. But in this moment, the man transformed into something that was really unpleasant. He was saying that he had no idea that I was asking for a nighttime ride, and I should know that it's way too dangerous to be driving at this time. Like, what was I thinking to ask him to do this? So he said I offered to pay more previously, and then I again emphasized that I was going to pay more just because it was nighttime, and I had already pre-offered that before this even happens. And then when I said that again in the car, he said, "Yeah, you're going to pay more." And just the vibe was really strange. His son was also in the car. He said that nobody's out on the road right now. It's because it's so dangerous, but there was tons of cars outside. So I don't know if I was missing something. I was trying to keep an open mind. Then we got to the airport and he's like, "You're gonna pay for parking too." And keep in mind that all the rides I've had with this guy previously, I've always paid double the rate. For example, if it was a $200 ride in Ethiopian birr, I would pay 400. I always paid more just because I respected his work and I really appreciated him, so that was just extra for him. And then in this moment, this guy, it's just like he doesn't give a shit about me. He just cares about the money. So he's asking for money, really emphasizing that I'm gonna pay him more for this inconvenience that we agreed on. And then when I get out, I just decided to give him, $10, which is equivalent to like 1,300 birr, more or less. Maybe that's $9. And keep in mind that the rate for that ride would have been about 300 birr. So I paid him about 4 times the normal amount. And the craziest thing was I was going to give him 2,500. But because of his attitude or the way that he was talking to me, I just felt like his true colors came out. And, without, reducing the tone of this video too much, all that to say that I think this experience showed me that you really have to understand the spectrum of human behavior. You have to see the culture from all the angles available. You can't just look at it from this idealistic, romantic sense where everything is so amazing and, the city is so perfect, it's so beautiful. You have to be able to see those more negative traits that exist within the culture and within people, because they exist everywhere. And Ethiopia is definitely no exception. It's a beautiful place, absolutely gorgeous people, and they celebrate well. They have an incredible display of emotion through their dance, which is that shoulder dance. I always forget the name. And I got to see that firsthand at my friend's wedding, which was also a cool experience. So I'm grateful for that. And I know that, what I saw is just a glimpse, but it does strike me that that is a very, real attitude. And there are a lot of people that are like that. And maybe it's not to say that how he treated me before was just nullified because of how he acted in that moment, but just to say that people do have imperfections, and I saw his in that moment, and I felt used personally. I just felt like I was just money at that point. Like he didn't give a shit about the person I was, the one that he had invited into his home. No longer mattered who I was. It was just more important that he gets paid for his work. And he was going to get paid. That was the whole thing. He was always going to get paid well, because I always try to take care of people that take care of me if I have the means. So that's my mixed review of my time in Ethiopia. I think overall it was incredibly positive and powerful, and I'll remember a lot of the characters and faces probably for a long time. One was this incredible woman I met named Emma, who might have been one of the most kind people that I've ever come across. And there's another named Haide, who was an awesome guy who I saw every day, shining shoes with his daughter next to him. And his daughter's no more than 3 years old, maybe. Everybody has a story, and nobody's life is, a perfect concoction of happiness. But I see that what we do with our life, what we're given, is really a cumulative thing. It's day to day, it's moment to moment, action by action. And I think I can forgive, this man, this friend, for treating me that way. But of course, I'm reminded that life is mixed, and so was my experience. I would definitely go back, absolutely, but I'll still remain cautious and, stay open for good people, but, maybe slightly more careful about those that wish to use me for my resource. So, yeah. I'm gonna say gnalo for watching this video. It's been a good time to consider everything and just to slow down, because it's picking back up quicker than I could have imagined. So It's gonna spend a bit more time on this, and then we're going, burning brights, going hard, making it happen. So until next one, take care and salam.